Hello. Nice to see you, Pavel.
Hi.
It's a bit unusual. Our live stream is a bit unusual today. We planned something absolutely different. Obviously, the situation changed not only on our podcast and not only on our live stream, but well in the world. And we decided to address it in a way we can and in a way we do best, and to talk about um, Ukrainian book history and about Ukrainian history in general and about Ukrainian books in general, and we'll see how it goes. We prepared some things. I prepared some things. Pavel prepared many more things. Anyway, we will talk about it. We'll show you, I think, lots of photos. As usual, you're welcome to ask us any questions you want. We'll try to answer them, and as usual, we'd be happy to see your comments on saying from where you come to watch our stream. That's always very interesting to us, and there are some useful links in the descriptions of our video, both on Facebook and Instagram. And if you wish to support Ukraine, there are some ways to do that, and we invite you to check these links. Well, you can do it right now. You can do it later, as you want, as you wish. And this is the first time in the history of our live streams that we have a moderator on Facebook and YouTube, because we are not sure that everything will go fine with the comments, but we ask everybody to stay correct and um, talk about books and book history there. That's what we invite you to do. If you can do this, please switch off the stream, or please don't comment. I don't know, anything. And so, Pavel, what did you prepare for us today? I will start with some things, but can you give us a short, introduction?
To my shame, I realized I didn't know as much about Ukrainian book history as I should have. So I started from what I know, what I've seen myself, and I've collected a few starting points for anyone interested in the topic. So basically, I'd like to talk about a few examples of the books either produced or kept, preserved in Ukraine. Then I would like to talk a bit about how book printing started in Ukraine, because unlike the parallel process in Russia, in Ukraine it was a much freer process, and many more typographies sprung up at the same time, and I'd like to show a
Some
few of them.
some interesting parallels to the modern time, I guess.
Yeah, and also my thoughts obviously go to Ukrainian people, but also to the cultural heritage of the country, which is largely preserved in its libraries and its book museums. And I'd like to name a few of them and to talk a bit about what's in there and what will one day be again able to see when we go there.
And we really hope. Well, we first and foremost, of course, we worry about the people of Ukraine, but uh, we really hope that the book history and book objects will survive as well, because
So far, culture and archives and libraries and museums weren't targeted by the war. There was one provincial museum that was bombed with some paintings saved from the fire. by the local people. There was a modern art center that was partly damaged yesterday in Kharkiv. But other than that, as far as I know, libraries are okay. I don't know what they are currently doing to save their holdings. I've been reading about what they did during the Second World War, and lots of people risked their lives to save what is now again in danger. Well,
We'll see,
yeah.
and we'll hope. We got the first comment on Facebook. Special collections and rare books, Western Michigan University, attending from Kalamazoo, Michigan, United States. Welcome. We hope you'll find some interesting information here from us, or maybe add some things from your site as well. So what should we do? Let me have
Perhaps you should start with the books that you highlighted this
yeah,
week.
yeah. I just need to work with two mice simultaneously, and that's that's a bit insane. Okay, so we decided that we need to spotlight, I guess, the Ukrainian bookish history and Ukrainian books, at least for some time, and we started mostly did it on Instagram and Facebook because these are our main outlets, and we didn't have any publications on YouTube since the 23rd of February, and which is also sort of strange coincidence because we posted our a talk that we recorded in Moscow last August, where we talked about Russian artist books, and many of these artist books were quite anti-militaristic and liberal, and very peaceful in their message. And then next day the invasion started, so it was really strange to us. And yeah, we'll share with you some of the posts we shared on Instagram, and just talk about the objects that are there, and then Pavel will proceed with his part of the live stream, and we're going to, I don't know for how long we will stream today. Usually we try to keep it to 90 minutes, and this is sort of our standard format. We are not going to talk about anything else besides Ukrainian book history today, and we'll go until we have things to talk about, or questions or anything else. So we'll see how it goes. So this was the first thing we posted, and this is this isn't an old manuscript, an old book. This isn't an old book. That's a replica of an old book of 450-year old Peresopnica Gospel, and that's a book that has been used for many times by the during the inauguration of the Ukrainian presidents. It's, I don't know, the modern world is sort of relating on memes, and there is this meme on the internet showing like the political arena of modern Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine in the past 20 years, and presidents are changing every few years in Ukraine, because that's the democratic process of things. And in Russia and Belarus, we have all the same two old guys who are sitting in the same spot, not moving. Well, in Russia there was a placeholder for some time, but everybody knows what's really happening. So but yeah, here is a symbol, one of the symbol of Ukrainian presidency and Ukrainian independence, I guess, in a way. And it's 450 years old, the gospel, and if you want, you can follow the link in the comments, and there is some additional description. It's very interesting illuminated book, and it was made in 1956, or it was made in 1556, 1561. So in the 16th century, in the monastery of the Holy Trinity in Iziaslav, and yeah, it still exists. It's still held in Vernadsky National Library in Ukraine, and presidents use a facsimile, which is on itself is a pretty magnificent work, and a pretty exact copy of the original book, and it's also interesting to see the facsimile as well, because oftentimes the copies are, well, done just to give some understanding of the original objects, but sometimes they are beautiful objects of art and history on their own. We had a discussion of some facsimiles earlier on our podcast, and sometimes you find some amazing objects.
I would like to add that I didn't know this book was used as such an important symbol, but I did know about the book. It's an interesting document of the Ukrainian language itself. For those of our viewers who've never thought about it, Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian languages, all three of them appeared, formed out of a common ancestor at about the same time, around 500 years ago. And this book is a very important document of the very early developments of Old Ukrainian or Old Belarusian. It's often called Western Russian language, but you can't say it's Russian. They all come from the same root, and this Proto-Ukrainian, Proto-Belarusian language has one of its best attestations in here. So it is an important document, linguistic document, as well as an important object.
And on the other side, while I was searching for yeah, by the way, here is President Zelensky during his inauguration ceremony with this gospel, and the second book is, as far as I think it's the Constitution of Ukraine. So the other two books used during the ceremony. But while I was searching for illustrations of the Пересопницкий Gospel, Пересопницкое Евангелие, I read some comments on Russian social media, and unfortunately, not once and not twice, I saw people Russian people teaching Ukrainians about the validity of their language. And discussing the book that proves the common root and how you call it, further independent forming of three languages. Still, there are people who try to diminish this history and to prove something, I don't know what. So that's it's one of the roots of the modern conflict as well, which is really painful to see. And yeah, but it is what it is.
When it's important to understand that Ukraine, when we say Ukrainian, Belarusian, and Russian languages, we mean spoken languages. Now, those are very closely related. On the other hand, if you look at the literary languages of the three countries, they are very different. And they also all formed at the same time and much later than the spoken languages. They all formed in the 19th century. And if Russian literary language is a conglomerate of Russian and Church Slavonic, which is basically ancient Bulgarian language. And it was constructed by, say, Pushkin and a generation earlier, Zhukovsky. On the other hand, Ukrainian literary language is strongly influenced by Polish language, Old Polish language. So if you hear how people speak, it's easier for us to understand than as Russian speakers than printed word, because there are many more influences from other languages have accumulated.
Yeah, that's true. So this was a week ago, and here is another object we decided to share. It's a manuscript, and it's called the Kiev Psalter. And it's a manuscript from 1397, and I guess it's one of the most famous Slavic illuminated manuscripts. Pavel would, I guess, add some thoughts on that, and I had a bit of a discussion on this in this post, and by the way, currently this manuscript is in a library, in National Library collection in St. Petersburg, so it's in Russia because it was bought out from Polish owners by Russian Count Sheremetyev, Sergei Sheremetyev in the 19th century. So currently this manuscript is in Russia. But anyway, I'm forgetting the words. It's a great part of the Ukrainian history, and so I had a discussion about the name of this manuscript. It's also called Spiridon Psalter, but anyway, the one of the most common names is the Kiev Psalter, and there are two ways to spell Kiev in modern language. There is one spelling that is more Sovietic, and it's K-I-E-V, and this is it, and there is standard modern Ukrainian way to spell Kiev, and it's K-Y-I-V, and in all, I guess, all international documents currently the second spelling is used. But still, if you look, if you search for manuscripts and objects like this, oftentimes you will see the old spelling used, because and that's the sort of standardized and used by many scientists and researchers names of the objects, and well, they stay the same as they were. If they change in the future, we'll see. But that was the reason we used this name, and we had a discussion on that topic on our Instagram, and it's another topic that's well, I'm sure will be discussed.
I also saw calls for using the third spelling of the city, the one that references the Ukrainian spelling of it, with I with two dots.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So then, which is basically Y, so Kyiv. So K-I with two dots V. You can find that online nowadays too.
And we have another comment on Facebook from Matt. I'm not sure it's Matt Mina or Matt Mina. I'm sorry, Matt, if I butchered your surname anyway because I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but is the Ukrainian Orthodox Church having theological debates on language roots with the Russian Orthodox Church about about this at all, or is it just politics? Many things about the Ukrainian Orthodox Church and Russian Orthodox. Well, it's Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchy and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of Kiev Patriarchy, as far as I remember, because they split some time ago, and there are churches in Ukraine that belong to. How do you say about churches that relate to the Moscow Patriarchate and the Moscow Patriarchy, and there are churches that are that relate to Kiev Patriarchy, and it's a huge other issue. We won't go into it because we are not experts in any way. There are lots of
it's very political. It's also related, I mean, to finer points of church policy, like can you pray with the Catholics and so on.
Yeah, especially as in Russia, Patriarch of whole Russia is a very politicized or politically involved person, and this doesn't help the situation at all. And but Ukraine has a very diverse Christian arena, Christian world, Christian. I don't know how. I don't know these words. I don't know which words to use. But there are Eastern Catholics in Ukraine, different types of them, and there are well lots of other churches as well. So it's a very diverse world, and we won't try to explain it to you, but yeah, there are tensions to say the least. So I guess I will just switch. There should be some more pages in this post, and it is.
And was the previous page the one you used for the preview?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Mistake. Yeah, that's the one I used for the preview. Exactly. It somehow seemed appropriate. Yeah.
I'll talk a bit more about this book. I have a few more images, but I think already you can see that it looks both like Byzantine examples and Russian examples. It's one of the most wonderfully illuminated books of the period in all of the Byzantine world period.
Yeah. So we had 6 posts in total, because it all started to happen a week ago, and we haven't posted anything today yet. And here's the third one, and this is the oldest dated Slavic Tetra-Evangelion. Yeah. So 4 books of the Gospel. It's dated to 1144. Approximately the same time Moscow was first mentioned.
Yeah. No manuscripts produced at that time in Moscow.
In Moscow, yeah, because I was taught history on Instagram by a Russian bookbinder from St. Petersburg, and he tried to explain me some things about Rus, about Russians, about Ukrainians, about the language, about everything else, and well. In Kiev, they've been producing manuscripts for quite some time before they started, before Moscow existed in the first place, and before they started doing anything cultural in Moscow.
Yeah, and in this particular case, it was a very westernized kingdom. It wasn't a part of centralized Kievan Rus. I mean, it was part of this sphere, but Halix-Volinsk kingdom, the rulers were intermarried with all the European royalty.
All the
Yeah.
Europe. Here in France, they
Yeah.
remember some interesting examples of Russian, how you call it, kniginya, Königin.
Queen. They call her Queen
Queen.
Anne.
Okay.
We talked about a book that may have belonged to her, and about a document that definitely has her signature from about this time, from the 12th century. Yeah.
Yeah. And we also, it was one of the previous live streams where we also talked about Globalistic script as well, and there will be a book in this carousel just a bit later with Globalistic script. And so this book was written in or attributed to have been written in the kingdom of Galicia, Волыnia, Галицко-Волынское княжество, and so Halich, the Ukrainian name of the place is Halich, and well, it's in the Ukrainian territory, and that's another amazing object, and
this object spent all or almost all of its life in Ukraine. So for well over 800 years, it's been there.
Yeah. What do we have next? Well, that's a preview of live stream. That's something quite modern, and you probably should. I wouldn't be able to open the video on the full screen right now, unfortunately, but it's one of the artist books I've seen some time ago. Artist book from a Ukrainian calligrapher, and that's a bit of a step from the far past to current days, and we will post some more artist books of Ukrainian artists on our Instagram in the upcoming days, so I guess stay tuned. And there are some beautiful objects and some really touching and inspiring and strange objects there. This book is one of the most amazing objects I guess I saw on that exhibition where I made the video, and it was made by calligrapher Dada Alexandrova. So next, and the last one. So here is Globalistic script I was talking about, and as we discussed with Pavel earlier on one of our earlier live streams, we can't read it. So it's so far from Cyrillics that it's not only that Europeans can't read it. I mean Europeans using Latin alphabets, but also Europeans reading Cyrillic alphabets can't read it. Where it was, you told that in one of the countries, in one of the Balkan
in Croatia.
In Croatia, they still try to keep up some relevance.
Yeah, there is a couple of newspapers and a website. I even found something like a forum that that was on like 10 years ago. So who knows? Maybe they'll found Wikipedia on Globalistic. That would be a blast. By the way, have you noticed something strange about this particular display?
Yeah, there are stylus.
Yeah.
Which are stylus for the Vox tables, I guess.
Yeah. It's definitely one of those because it has the other side for deleting what you've written.
For flattening the surface. Yeah, I was surprised as well, but
This particular image is not of the original.
Yeah,
It's a copy from a museum, from a book
and
museum. Yeah.
it's yeah, I wouldn't even say it's facsimile. Here is the image of the original one. You can find it digitized, all pages digitized, and so this object is called the Kiev missile, or Kiev Globalistic folios, because well, it's written in Globalistic, in the Globalistic script, and it's 1,000 years old.
It depends on who you ask, but there is no date, and
Yeah.
there is also no consensus. But the more popular opinion dates it to the second half of the 10th century. If correct, that would make it the oldest Glagolitic manuscript in existence. We know a bit about where it was made. I'm no linguist, but even at the time, difference between Slavic dialects, they were not languages just yet, was strong enough to differentiate texts from, say, Kievan Rus, from the Balkans, and from Moravia, or modern-day Czech Republic, where this probably comes from, and where Glagolitic script was first used en masse. The script was developed in Turkey by two modern-day Turkey, and obviously not far from Constantinople, by two monks, or at least one of them, who was sent to proselytize to Moravia. They weren't very successful, but some documents were made, and this is almost certainly one of them.
And once again, a beautiful object. It's just, I don't know how you can go by these books and don't have any feelings about them. So that's really the end of my part, and I've been spending more time on preparing the technical side of things. So many thanks for Pavel for deciding to join this live stream, because we had some concerns, and we still have these concerns, and I wouldn't talk more about them, because well, that's the part of our concerns. And I will read a couple more comments from Facebook, and once again, if you have any questions, please ask them. We will try to answer them. If we don't have any answers, we maybe will keep them for the future, and we'll answer them during the future live streams or podcasts. But anyway, once again, as if you would like to share from where you come, it's also always a pleasure to see people from different parts of the world here. Niklas Åkerlund, attending from Umeå, Sweden. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted. I don't know. Distressed. So I'm losing thoughts and words and English language. So Matt also writes, okay, yeah, gotcha. Same as America, with churches fighting with each other. Then sort of, but then there is a 1,000-year-old history here. So
and also, how much of a fight is it? Because we don't want to talk about Ukrainian churches, because they quite literally fought each other not so long ago.
Yeah. So what else? Daria Welsh Wilbur, attending from Merida, Yucatan. Great. Mexico,
yeah.
Mexico. Great to see you here. Christina Suihko, I'm sorry for butchering the name, from Finland. Elizabeth Westland, Sweden. Carolyn Maria Browning Hess, hello from Tijeras, New Mexico, United States. Matt is from Hendricks, Oklahoma. Thank you all for joining. It's really great to see people from a lot of different places here. I will switch off the my screen sharing, and we'll continue with Pavel's in a moment.
Can I share mine?
Yeah, just a moment. Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I wanted to, at first to add a few stories and comments to what Stepan just said. So this book, Kiev and Globalistic Folios, which is fully scanned and available on the Ukrainian library website. Hopefully, it's still online because yesterday most of the government-run sites weren't working. So I highly
And not like the Russian ones, which were hacked, and rightfully so, I guess. But the Ukrainian websites go dark, unfortunately, for some absolutely different reasons. And I'm sorry to interrupt, Pavel, but I seen a call to archivists to help archive the Ukrainian internet during these days. And if you are interesting to volunteer and help, that may be a great another way to help Ukraine these days, because internet is kind of ephemeral, and some things may be lost forever if they are not saved while they are online. So that's another way to help Ukraine and Ukrainian culture, if you have time and if you are ready to do this.
and I can't stress enough how much danger these websites are in, because while I was preparing this, most of the websites I looked at on Sunday and on Monday were offline. So today it's been a bit better. So
I really hope that large players like Google or Microsoft, who have lots of things cached, will help to rebuild Ukraine after all is finished. And well, we'll see.
And once again, I can't but comment on how magical all these letters look. When I look at this, I think about Ethiopian magic scrolls or some symbols scribbled by a Syrian monk.
And it's a bit step away from the Ukrainian theme, but I really invite all of our viewers, current and future viewers, to check work of other guests of our podcast, Kalin Taskalov, who you probably know under name Stepan. It's a amazing Bulgarian artist and bookbinder, and he recently wrote a manuscript and Glagolitic script, which is an amazing achievement, because he had to learn it and he had to write it and he had to bind it, and that's very impressive. And it's another connection to this old Bulgarian Slavonic Church Slavonic language, which Pavel mentioned also, and for Pavel it's a personal connection as well. So I'm always glad to mention Stepan here. Sorry, I'll continue interrupting you.
Feel free to. So the good thing about this full scan is that we don't just have the document itself, but also a few notes by people who found this manuscript. We have to say where it was found. It was found on the Sinai Peninsula in the great library in the only antique library surviving to our day. It's a late antique 5th century library of the St. Catherine Monastery. It was found there by this fine gentleman. This is Antonin Kapustin, who was clearly a member of the church, but he wasn't a priest. He was the head of the Russian church mission to Jerusalem. From there he launched a number of archaeological missions, both in Jerusalem, all over Palestine, and in Egypt. And he also traveled the region and looked for ancient books It was him who helped to organize the transfer of the Codex Sinaiticus to Russia and many other books. And he also found these Globalistic folios, but they didn't end up in Moscow or St. Petersburg. They ended up in Kiev, where they are now.
many other things that ended up in
Yeah.
metro. How do metro? I, in Russian, I would say
Metropolitan. Yeah,
metropolia.
yeah. So the two capitals of Russia. But he gifted it to the Kiev Theological Seminary, which he was used to be a pupil of. So by that time, Kiev was very much a part of this intellectual milieu, and people in Kiev could appreciate these ancient texts. They were first analyzed and published in Kiev. They are still studied by the scientists there. And not long ago, there was a big conference devoted to the materials. So it is very much known and loved. And certainly, Kievan folios they are. Then I just wanted to briefly mention another document that is not in Kiev.
Let me read some of the comments because we have more.
Yeah.
And, it's really nice to see them. So this time from YouTube, Katie Tuttle, I guess. I'm from Wisconsin, United States. I'm glad I caught you live. Nice to see you, Katie. So Sophia Vogel from Save Your Books, thank you for highlighting Ukrainian books at this time. Thank you for being with us. Anesi Bookbindings, I'm not sure with the pronunciation. Sorry about that. Thanks so much for doing this from South Africa. Bound, joining you from the UK. Glad to see you talk and slides. Yeah, thank you for joining us. And what else? Alice Setso, attending from Alberta, Canada. Andrea Klein, Ohio, United States. Stella Vilela, Sao Paulo, Brazil. Sorry, PC glitching. Sarahberg, Kahalan, Dayton, Ohio, United States. Thank you for sharing these beautiful books. Steve Carlson from New Orleans, Louisiana. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, if you have any questions, we'll try to answer them. Matt has another question. Any sci-fi fantasy authors from Ukraine that you all can recommend? Yes, definitely, but not right now. And then I should check if there are translations
and also, I'm thinking about a number of authors right now, but I can't be absolutely sure they are Ukrainian.
Yeah, or Russian or Soviet or anything in the middle, or so it's.
You have to understand. For us too, we were born in Soviet Union, and we were raised very much in this post-Soviet world where those nationalistic distinctions were only coming up. On personal level, there was no animosity. Nobody thought of someone less because they were Ukrainian.
In the recent days, I understood that we cannot anymore use words like no one, never, and the like, because obviously there were some people who did this. They were out of our circle of friends and acquaintances, but unfortunately, obviously there were some people, and we see some of these people in charge of Russia nowadays. So yeah, that's an interesting question, Matt. Thank you, and we'll try to answer it maybe a bit later. Maybe somebody maybe we have some Ukrainian viewers, I guess not from Ukraine currently, but maybe from other countries. Maybe somebody from some of them can give you some recommendations. But we'll keep that in mind. Yeah, Pavel is
I
writing it down
noticed this.
for a very
I noticed. I left a note for myself. We should totally answer that question.
That's a great question. Yeah, we by the way, we almost I think we didn't talk about modern literature before, and that's a good chance to do that on one of our future live streams. Yeah. So you wanted to mention something else?
So to mention another document that we talked about on our previous podcast, and appropriately a very international one. It's known as Kiev.
We mentioned it on our podcast that hasn't aired yet, so our viewers cannot watch it. But it's one of the next ones in the list.
Actually, I talked about it on one of our earliest live streams,
yeah,
so that we can find. Okay. This document comes from Kiev, but it's not currently in Kiev. It's not in Moscow. It's not in St. Petersburg. It's not anywhere near. Back in the 10th century, this letter from the Jewish community, and yes, it is not Globalistic, it's Hebrew, traveled all the way to Cairo, where it spent another like 800 or 900 years before being discovered in late Victorian times as part of the famous Cairo Geniza. We did, as Stepan mentioned, we talked to one of the curators of
Alexander Gordon, yeah.
What it is a plea for help from a Jewish Kievan community, asking to send them some money to buy one of their members out of debt slavery. And it has so many interesting features, including the names, because names are half Slavic, half Jewish, and with just a little pinch of Khazar mixed in. So those, here they are, 6 letters on the bottom left of the document. They are not Hebrew, they're Turkic runes inscribed by an official. God knows how it got to Khazaria, we don't know. But it says, I read this. And we know who he was and what he did, but how it got there, what it means. And we did talk a bit more about the Khazars and their connection to Kiev in particular, and and the documents that were preserved in Cairo Geniza. So that's something to look forward to. So Kiev has had connections with Egypt and the steppe nomads in the 10th century, and with Jews all over the world too, because from later period we have mentions and even some ideas and actual words from rabbis of Kiev. There aren't many of them, but from the 12th and 13th century we know that this community didn't only survive but prospered both culturally and intellectually. So this is that.
We have another question, which is sort of connected to something that we discussed a bit earlier. Steve Carlson asks, to your knowledge, given current bombings, have there been any special efforts to protect Ukrainian antiquities and literature? To our current knowledge, yes, there are actions and special efforts taken to protect the objects of art and history and culture. It's not always easy, especially for the museums that are not in the major cities, because in major cities they obviously have more time to do that. Even if a city is sieged, it's much harder to take it, and there is definitely more time to do that. And if you watch reports from Ukraine, from Kharkiv, from Kiev, from other cities, you see that many people continue to do a lot of ordinary things, and it looks especially, I don't know, in strange in this situation where there is war and they continue to work or do things. And
I'm not sure it's strange. It's inspiring. I recently read a book about what Soviet historians did during the Second World War. And if you look at the books published by the Academy of Science in 1946, you'll find a number of scientific papers and manuscripts that were written during the war, that were written under bombs, that were written in St. Petersburg when it was besieged and there was no food. People continued to work, and they left some wonderful diaries of that time too. They are scary to read, but also very inspiring. And I was thinking about these words these days, that you have the best that you can do is to do what you know, because the war will end, and we need to remember what this fight is about. This fight is about normalcy. So as much normalcy as can continue is good. I send my love to everyone who has courage to continue.
So yeah, but answering the question, there are procedures. There are procedures that have existed during Soviet times, and Ukraine for sure has a lot of procedures inherited from there, and so there are smart safety procedures.
Yes, and there are also lists of the most important cultural objects, including books. They were first prepared before the Second World War, and they have been regularly updated since. We don't know which of the procedures are currently acted upon. We don't know what will happen to what objects, but we hope most of it survives.
And obviously, I'm sure there are procedures that were developed during the last 8 years, because since the Crimea annexation, Ukraine has done a lot of homework, and I'm sure these procedures exist. And as Sarah just wrote, often it is best not to publicize those protection efforts, especially if materials are being removed temporarily from museums and libraries. Yes, exactly. In the times of war, it's best not to publicize the things, but the procedures exist, and that doesn't mean that there is no opportunity for a chance hit or something like that. Not opportunity. There is no chance for a hit, for a random hit that will destroy some objects. But we hope they will survive. Well, we hope people will survive. Moving forward, I guess.
Yeah. A few more words about this book that you highlighted, Kiev Soltov 1397. And by the way, wherever you go on Wikipedia, you see this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Wikipedia
knowledge is war is peace. Knowledge
yeah,
should be restricted.
We've always been at war with Oceania. Yeah, and Wikipedia.
There are not many news outlets in Russia remaining that are not fully aligned with the administration of the president of Russia, and two of them were excluded from the public networks yesterday. The radio station of Echo of Moscow, and the TV channel Rain or Dost. So they are not aired anymore, and they are remaining online for now. But well, they can always block YouTube or something. They block Wikipedia.
They're already doing that. I'm speaking to you over VPN because while I was preparing this, I realized that most of the images on Wikipedia are not showing. And so it's going on. So anyway, Kiev and Salsa, why it is so important? And I mean, apart from it being so beautiful, it's one of the most beautiful books of the time. It's also very influential and in some unexpected ways. Say this church that is painted here, it's an imaginary church. Nothing like that was built yet at the time, but a century later, very similar buildings start to appear all over Western Russia. And we don't know who made it, but again, it would be wrong to call this person a Russian painter or a Ukrainian painter. He is a great Byzantine painter, because at that time, we were a part of a much larger world. If it wasn't for the text, you wouldn't be able to say where it was made. It could have been made in Armenia, for all we know, but it wasn't. Let me show a few more of the images, just because I like it so much. It's so flowy, so playful, so bright. I mean, look at these fellas. This is a distant memory of river gods. So we see a thoroughly Christian manuscript 1,000 years after the Christianization of Roman Empire, and we still see echoes of that culture. We also see things like that. Not something you expect to see in 14th century Rus.
And I guess in some European manuscripts, Western European manuscripts of the similar times, camels were often drawn not as good as here.
Well, in Constantinople, they knew what camels looked like pretty well, because they had great contacts with the Arab world, say. Despite being constantly at war, they were sending each other gifts and so on. And by the way, people from all over Rus, so from Ukraine and Russia and Belarus, traveled to Belarus, sorry.
Belarus now.
I'm really sorry. Traveled to Constantinople, and there's memory of it all over Kiev and all over Moscow, even in terms of street names and place names. The Golden Horn, which is an important part of Constantinople, is remembered in street names both in Moscow and in Kiev. And there is a monastery founded at about the time this book was written, which is located on the Golden Horn embankment, and which has the oldest building in Moscow. And it was built as a memory of its founders' travel to Constantinople to buy books and icons. So it is a very interconnected world, and it was to remain so for centuries and centuries since then. Another book I wanted to talk
couple of
about.
more comments,
Yeah.
if I may. So on YouTube, Carolina Labe or Labe, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Hugs to both of you. Cheer up. Well, we try, but it's we have recorded a podcast earlier today, and it's really busy day for us, and we are a bit exhausted already. But we have recorded the podcast episode with Tanya Rakic, who is in charge of the St. Nicholas bookbinding fair in Belgium that will happen in a month on the 10th of April, and she already started to cheer us up, and she showed her new workshop, and it was amazing to talk to her. And it was amazing to talk to somebody about books and not about war, for a change. And but yeah, thank you, Carolina. All of you help us bit by bit. Matt also writes, hopefully culturally important books don't end up in England rare bookshops, like what happened with in Iraq with stealing. Not only with Iraq or something like that, but also something we discussed during one of our previous live streams. So when Soviet government started to sell a lot of cultural objects, including from Ukraine, during the early Soviet times. So yeah, many objects already have changed a lot of hands. Steve Carson once again writes, "Thank you. Our prayers are with all the affected by this war. Definitely." So yeah, that's it for now. And Pavel, thank you.
And I'll probably mention a few more manuscripts later on, but this one is one of over 200 manuscripts of a very important book. It's called Kievan Cave Patericon. So Patericon means stories of the fathers, which is church fathers and monks, and Kievan caves are the location of the oldest monastery in Ukraine and in all of former Rus lands. It's located in caves underneath Kiev. I've been there a number of times. I assume Stepan has been there too. And the legends of this monastery and of how it was founded and of how Christianity first started in Kiev, and generally about the life in very, very early years of Kiev were recorded in this book in about 13th century. This is not a 13th century copy. It is about 150 years later. And it is an amazing source. I read its portions that relate to the building of the earliest church in Kiev, not the big cathedral, but the church of a smaller size. And it tells, and it's a wonderfully poetic and magic book, and lots of copies survive all over the world. There's probably one in a museum or library near you. So this particular sort of manuscript, many of you can probably see live in your local library. Although no, this is the most important and the most complete copy of it. I've only seen it once on an exhibition a few years back. It's late 14th century or early 15th century copy from Tver. So I'd like to move on to a second block.
Okay,
of,
let me
yeah.
we move on to second block. I will read some more comments. So account that is called Bound. I'm not sure who is behind this account, but anyway, YouTube account Bound. It's wonderful to focus on cultural artifacts as they highlight the interconnectedness of peoples across national borders throughout history. Yes, and that's something we've been trying to highlight since the beginning of our podcast. All of us are connected. All of us have things to share with each other and to teach each other and to laugh about each other. And it is absolutely maddening that other people decide to wage war. And well, we hope this will change, but being realistic, anyway, let's continue with books.
So, another block of stories I wanted to tell you is how book printing started in Ukraine. It's a complicated, convoluted story. There's lots to say about it, and lots to see, because many of the early books are preserved in some numbers. Again, all over Europe, all over the world. But I'll give you a few names, and if you're interested, you can see more for yourself. So we have to start with this fine gentleman, Ivan Fedorov, who was probably from Moscow, though we don't know that, who studied in Poland, in Krakow, and who is one of the earliest printers in Russia. There was probably one earlier Danish printer here, but he's the first named one. Here is his signature, which I find amazing.
Which everybody can read.
Well, yes, and what it says is Ioannis Fedorovich Moscovus Typographus. I like this. So he says everything we need to know about him, that he's from Moscow and that he's a printer. And I'm talking about him because, well, he is one of the earliest printers in Russia. He's certainly the earliest printer in Ukraine, at least as far as we can tell. So his story goes like this. He studies in Krakow. He comes back to Moscow. He prints a few books there, has some disagreement with powers that be, as it usually happens, and flees for his life to Poland. There, he, in the city of Zabludov, he found a printing house of which architecturally nothing survives, but in terms of books, there are a few examples. And again, you can probably see them if you really want to. This is not an original binding, but it's a lovely one. It looks very medieval in terms of its symbols. So pelican, it's in its piety, a unicorn, what is probably a lion, and the printing itself is not that bad. I mean, compared to the very earliest books printed in Russia, it's progress, although he still uses the same font, the same lead, like literally the same letters. The overall composition has advanced quite a bit, and here Here's more. Oh, wait, that was an original binding, because I think we see a very similar coat of arms here. And it is a coat of arms of the patron who paid for the printing of the book and for founding the Blood of Printing House, which continued to exist after Fedorov left and went back to modern day Ukraine, which he does a lot. He is, unlike his legacy in Moscow, which did not last. It lasted in terms of pupils, but not in terms of actual typographies. What he did in, look at that. What he did in Poland and Ukraine did endure. The second place he went from there is the city of Ostrog. Here is the castle, and I'm not just showing you a beautiful image. This is the actual building where he printed his books. I mean, not a bad place, and clearly he wanted some distance between him and outside
And
world.
other people, yeah.
Yeah.
Like another
so we don't hear much about the city of Ostrog. I'm not even sure it's now a city and not a town. Probably still a city, certainly historically. But it was the location of a very important principality at the time, and we are talking, what are we talking here, 1580s or thereabouts, I think. And it was the place where the very first university or university-like organization was founded in modern day in Ukraine. And as part of that drive, typography was founded by a local duke. So he first tried to import printers from Poland, from Denmark, but nobody had heard of Ostrog and decided not to go. Ivan Fedorov really needed a place to work, and this was a great one. Now from that run, we have quite a few books. The best known of them is the Ostrog Bible. I'm not sure it's the first book printed in Ukraine. No, it's not. I'll show you the first a bit later. Wait. But maybe it is. Anyway, again, we are seeing that this is a Muscovite printer who trained in Poland and is now working in Ukraine, but save for the font, it's a European book. I mean, the composition is very Renaissance inspired, probably lifted directly from Renaissance engravings. The book itself is rather impressive in terms of its size, so it's not like a small. It's not a small thing, not at all. It's a full Bible, Tetra Evangelion, as you said, and more than that, a full Bible. I think both the Jewish books and the Christian ones. I'm not sure about that, but it's a work of love. It took 2 years to print it, at least. So it was a big project and a successful one, because quite a number of them do survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like this image. This is the creation of the Ostrog Bible, a very, very romantic image. I mean, look at how clean the printer is. Look at how docile the woman, the only woman in the image who is in the background bringing them vodka is. The whole thing is hilarious to my mind. But then other than ahistorical details, it probably did look something like this. I don't think they had bookshelves quite like that, but certainly the count was wearing something along these lines. I did find a very sketchy drawing of him. The printing press certainly looked like that.
Mm-hmm.
The hands of the printers were probably as muscular, but
I think there is a similar reconstructed printing press somewhere in Belarus. There were some enthusiasts who were working on a project to recreate one of the I don't know if the oldest printing press in Belarus or one of the oldest. So yeah, you can.
I'll show you the oldest press in Ukraine a bit later.
Sure.
So we certainly have nothing from the 16th century or early 17th. Well, it would be a freak survivor. I don't know of. I'm not sure I know of 16th century presses in Europe. I may be wrong. I know 17th century examples. Maybe there are some examples preserved from earlier. But anyway, here's another example, more relevant to the studying, the university, the school part.
I think the only older presses that I know of in Europe are not printing presses, but are paper presses. Of those, I know some which are quite old, but definitely not printing presses.
This is Azbuka, Abecedarium.
Abecedarium.
Yeah, Abecedarium from even a bit earlier than the Ostrog Bible, and it is also a labor of typographer's love. I mean, I really like how all these letters, half of which I don't know how to pronounce, by the way, and this is Cyrillic. I mean, those at the bottom, I have mostly no idea what they are. This is Yach, this is Omega, but what these are probably U's. The big U's, the little U's, these letters all disappeared 150 years later, and they were mostly used in both Ukrainian and Russian texts to transliterate Greek words. Like theta, there should be a theta somewhere in here. Yeah, here it is. No, here it is. It was only used for Greek words. So anyway, I mean, it's not that different to modern day abecedariums. I mean, there's a letter, there's a list of words starting with this letter, and you can even still read it. Like Buki is the name of the letter B, and Budi on Buddhist. So as schoolboys exercise. I've seen a copy of it very, very recently in Moscow. Now these are really rare. Unlike the Bibles, everything that was used by students or school kids, not very good at surviving. Yeah. Here's another example from the same printing house, but after Fedorov left, he wasn't one for staying for long. This is a list of saints. So Mutsa, which is martyr, female martyr, Muchenitsa. Yeah. Interestingly, some of these books, and again, I'm not a philologist, but I am told this particular book, Apocryphes, is written in a form of proto-Ukrainian language. Apparently, you can recognize some details of the language that are recalled in later. And here is the most famous book Ivan Fedorov printed in Ukraine, in his third residence there in Lviv. I think this is how it is pronounced in English. It's also Lviv in Ukrainian, Lvov in Russian. It's a great city in Western Ukraine with some of the oldest links to Poland and other Western cities, and with an old university, great libraries, and a great tradition of book printing. And the first printer there was, again, Ivan Fedorov, and he printed this Apostle, which is a variant of a book he printed in Moscow first. And you can find it online. This is an example from the National Library of Ukraine, and is one of the greatest treasures. And also you can see his signature here, so we know it was him, unlike most of the books here printed elsewhere that we have to recognize by the actual font he used. And this particular book includes, it's towards the end of his life, and he includes the story of how he founded printing in Moscow and in Poland and in Ukraine. And it's translated into English, and you can find the whole story. It's quite a journey. It wasn't a peaceful time, shall we say. So we don't really know what happened to this last printing house he founded in Lviv. But one of the ideas is that expertise, people, and perhaps even actual printing equipment were later transferred to Kiev, to the cave monastery of Kiev. Obviously, it wasn't all in the caves. Caves are still there, but there are buildings above the caves, and in one of those buildings, this famous printing house was founded only a bit after. I'm sorry. Only a bit after Fedorov's printing adventures in Ukraine ended, and it still stands there. I've been there. It's a very impressive place. It's a printing museum. I'll talk about it a bit later. And since the very early 17th century, and for over 100 years, it was the heart of Ukrainian printing. Among the many books that were printed there, I'd like to, and you can go and see a whole load of books on Wikipedia, and you can go from there and find full scans on the website of Ukrainian and Russian libraries. There's still a joint website where both countries upload their digitized books. I don't know if it's gonna function from here on, but here is the Kiev cave Patericon I talked about. This is a 17th century book, and you can immediately see what the books published by the printing house of this monastery were known for their complexity and their intricacy, and sometimes their unusual format. So this is a book with a fold-out map. You can see that there are lots of small details, small writing, and again, for 17th century Russia and Ukraine, maps are very unusual, especially those that look like actual places. And you can compare it; it's a pretty decent map. I'd like to show you a few more of their title pages, because I really like what they do. So there's always so much going on, so many symbols. So this is, can you read the name of the book?
I see. Разумения, ключ разумения. Okay. The key of understanding.
Yeah, and indeed there is a key. And lots of yes, and lots of religious symbols, and this is very much related to the Kievan school of Kievan medieval school of poetry. They often wrote very strange, very esoteric and full of symbols poems, and often wrote them down in shape of an object. So this is sort of harking back to that tradition. This is 18th century, and you can sort of see the continuation of tradition, but you can also see the development. Very early on, I couldn't find color examples, but I know of 17th century examples of books printed in two colors in Kiev, and I sort of like how they place the text. I mean, it respects the boundaries. It's sort of trying to go. It all looks very organic. But again, look at the imagery. In what way is this Slavic? This is an international book. By the way, this on the bottom is the main church of the monastery. Soon after it was refurbished, shall we say, in this style.
Quite recognizable.
Yeah, originally a very Byzantine-looking building. In late 17th century, a local ruler was very high on Baroque vibes and added those wonderful domes, and you can still see it all over Kiev, which I hope to do one day again. And just one more, I just like it. Again,
Ivan Zlatoust. I'm not sure how it's called, how he's called in English.
Ivan Chrysostom. So Ivan Goldenmouthed, okay. But in Greek, yeah. Not a very nice guy, very xenophobic and anti-Semitic, but some of his what do you say in a church, like when okay, some of his books are still read and valued both in Ukraine and Russia, and this is a very nice example. Again, you can see Greek letters. You can see the very complicated construction of the Russian and Ukrainian way of writing. They are trying to reproduce this calligraphic effect when you add small letters on top of big ones. So do go and look through this directory on Wikipedia. I highly recommend it. And just one more example, just again a somewhat later one. I don't know what it says. Can you read it?
No.
No.
Somehow it's not only there are almost no vowels there, but it's some abbreviation or something.
Yeah, but again, a fascinating example. I wasn't able to find what it is, but again, it has very Renaissance-looking details. They continue that tradition into the 18th century, and still a rather old typography. I mean, this is 1714, so after Peter the Great said not to use half of these letters, and so, but the monks have their own opinion. Another interesting center of printing from 1670s in Chernihiv, which is again Western Ukraine, I think. And the cool thing about it that the printing house,
I guess northern Ukraine.
Yeah, northern Ukraine. Yeah,
is to the north.
It's closer to Belarus. Yeah, the printing house still survives. Unfortunately, I don't think it's still used as anything relevant, but some of the books printed there, by the way, printed by this fine gentleman. I mean, okay, you wouldn't call him a liberal or progressive from the look of him, but he is a very controversial figure in his time, and he wrote some impressive books, and he founded an important publishing house. And here's one of his books. It's called, oh my God. Just a moment, I forget. The Spiritual Sword, it's called. Духовный меч. And like most of the literature printed at that time, it argues whether Ukraine should stay culturally with Russia, whether it should move towards Poland and Catholics. So you see lots of Catholic imagery in here, and he not so subtly argues against further Russian influence. So again, a rather it's been going on for a long time, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And he doesn't. Once again, that's a great illustration of. The rich history and of Ukrainian culture, the rich Ukrainian history and rich history of cultural history, and once again, each time I see people trying to denigrate this history and by the way, its influence on the Russian history as well, and our Russian culture and our Russian art, it's just makes me so mad because. This is so untrue and so, I don't know, so not right. I don't have words.
Here's another example, because not unlike some Ukrainians of the 1990s, in 1690s there were calls for Latinization of Ukrainian alphabet, and there were lots of experiments. Some books were printed in Polish and in Ukrainian at the same time using Latin alphabet, and this is an example of that. I think this is old Ukrainian. I may be wrong, but I think it is. But it is in Latin letters, and it's called Lutnia Apolinova. Yeah, it is Ukrainian, it's not Polish. So it means the lute of Apollo. And you can see that it has lots of letters with these symbols that are lifted from Polish language. I don't know what it's called when a letter is crossed. So you see that Ukraine is sort of finding its own way in between these two monsters that are attacking it from both sides, but also interacting with them and borrowing from them and influencing them.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, because of course, there are lots of Ukrainian influences in Eastern Poland. There are, well, in terms of books too, although it's another story. And you can see that he was also influenced by the West in theological terms. He is still an Orthodox Christian, but he is part of the church that signed union with Catholic Church. So he is not a part of Catholic Church, but he thinks of himself as part of this international Christian brotherhood, and not just Eastern Christianity. Finally, there is this little-known story, and
this black plaque on top of each Wikipedia page.
What can we do?
It will remain in this video forever, and that's an awful reminder.
This is the symbol of another very important printing house, also in Lviv, like the latest of Fedorov's ventures, and it was founded by an order of by a brotherhood of monks who were Orthodox, but also influenced by. You see, Orthodox churches don't usually have brotherhoods. That's Western ideas. And this particular brotherhood was influenced by Jesuit ideas, by not just praying, but also proselytizing, by printing books, by writing. And the building where they worked, and this is early 18th century, still survives. You can visit it, and there is their coat of arms on the top. Lots of books survive from the early years, and in some form or another they continue to exist. And there is a printing house which is called Lviv Mission Brotherhood, but obviously in Ukrainian, which survives to this day, and there is a small museum there, and lots of wonderful books were printed there. I just wanted to show this example because it's also a very historical one. So it says, can you read that?
Венец Победы. So I don't remember the word.
So the crown of victory.
The crown of victory. Yeah.
And the victory they mean is the victory in Poltava battle. So this is 1709. I think it is the first great victory of Russian Navy. Yeah, built by Peter the Great and fought in Poltava in Ukraine against the Swedish forces of Charles XII, I think he was.
I don't remember the number, sorry.
Yeah, one of those, a big number. By the way, I recently found a monarch whose number is 57, but that's just because the family named all their boys the same, and the numbers just indicated which John or Christian it was in this particular century. But anyway, so this crown of victory was printed by this Lviv printing house and given to Peter the Great and other important people.
Is it printed in 3 colors or is it colorized?
Yes. In 4. I think even in 4.
In 4. That's quite amazing.
And one of those important people had the same surname as a former owner of this particular book. If you see there's a surname on the top of it, Menshikov.
Menshikov, okay.
Menshikov, yeah. So Peter the Great's best friend and right hand. And this book had one purpose in mind. Please give us money to rebuild Ukrainian cities after this devastating but victorious, glorious war. And this, and it had some effect because the Church of the Brotherhood did receive a considerable sum of money from Menshikov and Peter the Great. So again, books, wars, they are never too far from each other. And to finish off this block, I'd like to show you this printing press.
Yeah, the one you mentioned.
Yes, this is the oldest printing press in Ukraine, preserved in the Museum of Lviv Brotherhood Typography.
I've been to Lviv only passing through the city, and I always wanted to spend more time there, and I really hope I will have a chance, but
I'm not sure. It is different to the examples that I've seen of the era. I'm not sure I quite understand how it works. What is this horizontal part here, for example? How do you raise? How do you press? Is it a working example? Probably not. But it is an impressive artifact from early 18th century, and
we should probably ask printers about it.
Yeah. I know a few people. You too. We should ask them.
Definitely. So Susan Barrows on Facebook writes, so important to promote this culture. This is, after all, what is at stake: books, film, food, stories. Yes, that's true. This is all important, and we hope you'll help us to spread this message and talk more and more about it.
Do we have more? And just to finish us off, I'd like to mention the museums of Ukraine. I won't be talking much about them because
we definitely, there is many more things to talk about, and as I told in the beginning of our live stream, we usually try to limit everything to 90 minutes, 1 hour and 30 minutes, and it's already more. And there is much more to say, many more things to show, many places to visit when there is possibility, and we definitely invite you to visit free Ukraine where it's possible, and to help the country in any way you can. But I forgot what I wanted to say.
So I'll just name a few libraries, and you should really go to their websites and look at what's at stake, because most of them have their main treasures listed on their websites, and most of them have English versions by now. This is the National Library of Ukraine in Kiev. This is where many of the treasures we talked about are kept. By the way, like this wonderful book. This is 12th century. This is our common ancestry. This is one of the most amazing surviving books, both in terms of decoration and in terms of text that's in it. Unfortunately, it was damaged in the wars. Literally, 3 wars left their
marks, on this.
Left their marks on yes, but it's still an amazing object. This one I've seen myself. It's comparable to the best examples of East Slavic calligraphy. There, there is also where is I must have missed the museum. No, I haven't. So there are lots of libraries and book museums in Lviv. This is amazing. I never knew that. So virtually every important person in Lviv's history built a library, or at least donated a dozen bookshelves with some unique manuscripts. And this is one of them. This is Scientific Library of the Lviv University, where probably the most famous of the manuscripts of Western Ukraine are kept. Here is another example, a wonderful palace of a library, and this is where the library was founded. It used to be a church, then it became a book storage facility, and now it's a museum. There are I'm not sure I can show you. There is also, and I've heard about this place before. There's the library of the House of Scientists. So this is a reading room, academic library, and academic reading room for the leading scientists of the city, and it is quite amazing. It is I think early 19th century. I may be wrong on this one, and it's been recently restored, and please don't damage it. There's one of the reading rooms of the another library, and I'll show one more. This is a library. This is a modern library for common people, so not for scientists, just for reading. But there are so many libraries, and every one of them has very impressive holdings. So Lviv is a really important city, and one I really want to visit one day. My prayers go to them. There is also a number of libraries in Odessa, another important Ukrainian city with some impressive collections of manuscripts and incunabula. And I've been to this particular museum. It hasn't changed, which is good, I think.
This is something that sometimes happens with this museum.
Yeah. I lost other photos. So it's not a big museum, but it has some very impressive holdings. So the best of what the Odessa libraries have, as a very knowledgeable and friendly staff, and at least 15 years ago, they weren't used to visitors as such, so we're always glad to talk to you. Another museum which I already mentioned is in Kiev, and this is a museum of printing in Kiev Cave Monastery, and they also have an Instagram. Not much in it, but you can get some idea of what the museum looks like. And we send our support, and you should too. They clearly read it, because you can see that they are using Instagram for what it's used now nowadays. It's a nice museum. Please support them. Please send them your love. And one final photograph, which is not from a museum or a great library. Just this morning, I was scrolling the news and I saw this photo from Lviv library. Not a big library, a small library not far from the center of the city, and you can see librarians and other volunteers constructing like net for hiding buildings for masking buildings because
military masking nets. Yeah.
Yes, because even though Lviv is one of the westernmost cities in Ukraine, there's been explosions and God knows what comes next. I don't want to see libraries being used like that. I don't want this to continue. My love and care and my tears go to everyone in Ukraine. If you can help, do help.
Yeah, we have some links below in the description, below on YouTube, and somewhere near the video in the description of our live stream. You can find ways to help. These are all checked causes and organizations. You can also do your own checks, because in this age of fake news, you definitely need to verify your sources and verify the organizations you donate to, and I invite you to do your checking as well. I have two very special commenters, viewers on YouTube. I wanted to say hi to them, and to Sava and Sonia, and Estela Vilela on Facebook. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for staying with us, Stella. Sarabir Kahalan, this is an absolutely wonderful respite from all the horrors unfolding. Thank you for sharing all of this information with us right now. Thanks a lot for watching, and please help to share the message. I guess share these videos, because we definitely want more people to see more, to know more about the Ukrainian culture. Maybe it will make them to research more, to find out more. There are lots of links in the descriptions of these videos. You can continue your research, and you can start your own adventure, endeavor into the culture of Ukraine and history of Ukrainian books. Bound on YouTube. Lviv sounds like a wonderful place to visit, especially for book lovers. Absolutely, definitely.
And not just book lovers. Architecturally, it's one of the jewels of Europe.
Not just book lovers, not just Lviv, other places in Ukraine as well, and we hope that you will have a chance to do that soon. What else? Nicholas Okerlund, thank you very much for giving this important presentation. Alice said so. Thank you so very much. Thank you all for staying with us. Pavel, you wanted to say something else?
Can I stop sharing the screen because it breaks my heart?
Yeah. Let's do this.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone who stayed with us. I really didn't know if I'd be able to do this, because what could we possibly do? What could we possibly say? But
I'm really grateful to our viewers that our moderator didn't have to
moderate,
and that she only helped us with posting the links. So many thanks to Katya as well, and Carolina Labe on YouTube. Thanks also. Gracias, Ekaterina. Thank you very much. It was very therapeutical for us. Obviously, it doesn't help people struggling at the moment, but there are ways to help them at least a bit from our side of events and things, and we'll hope for the better.
I think this is it.
Yeah, that's it for today. As usual, we will stay for a couple of minutes because yeah, there is a delay between the end of between us and stream on live platforms, and what we will start ending the stream right now. Thanks again. See you next time on our YouTube channel and Facebook page, and we will definitely talk more about the Ukrainian culture and Ukrainian books in the future. Thank you. So we are waiting for the stream to stop.